Your son, he's gone. He was weak and foolish, like his father. So I destroyed him.
My name is Sarah Connor. August 29, 1997. It was supposed to be Judgment Day. But I changed the future. Saved 3 billion lives. Enough of a resume for you?
No. You may have changed the future, but you didn't change our fate.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Weak and Foolish Movie Podcast. My name is Mike Tang, and with me is...
It's Job Eng.
For those of you tuning in for the first time, each of our podcast episodes begins with a non-spoiler section of the movie, where we describe our thoughts on the film without revealing any specific plot details. This section is then followed by a spoilers discussion where we delve into all aspects of the film. In today's episode, we will be discussing Terminator Dark Fate, the latest addition to the 35-year-old franchise. Dark Fate does something interesting in that it ignores all the movies that came after Terminator 2 Judgment Day, kind of like what Halloween did last year in that iconic horror franchise. So Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines, Terminator Salvation, Terminator Genesis, those movies are now irrelevant and non-canon. This is also the first Terminator film to have James Cameron return in a creative role since Terminator 2. He's credited here as a producer, and he also helped shepherd the story. And this is also the first film since T2 to bring back Linda Hamilton as Sarah Connor, one of the greatest female action characters of all time. So there are a lot of reasons to have hope and excitement for Dark Fate to kind of reverse the downward trend that we've been seeing in the franchise since James Cameron made T2. I'm just going to start off the bat and say that I am a huge Terminator fan. For most kids, Star Wars was their childhood. For some reason, my parents never showed me Star Wars until they were released in theaters in 1997. So for me, Terminator 1 and 2 filled that void. I've probably seen both of those movies about 30 times in my life, possibly more. Still to this day, the ending of Terminator 2 makes me emotional. I tear up, I well up inside. I believe these are transcendent pieces of cinema. Yes, Martin Scorsese, cinema. And I consider T2 my second favorite film of all time. So considering all this, I think, Job, it's better that you start off by giving your non-spoiler thoughts on Terminator Dark Fate, since you're not as emotionally attached to this franchise as I am. I think your viewpoint is a little bit more objective than me. So why don't you start first?
Yeah, I suppose that's correct. I do have memories of seeing this as a kid, but I don't think I saw it 30 times like you might have. And yeah, so my thoughts on this film are, I actually want to talk a little bit about our context for the night we watched it. So the night we went to watch, we were hanging out at your house, Mike, and my wife had not ever seen Terminator 2, but she was coming to watch Dark Fate with us later that evening. So you took us on a whirlwind hour tour of T2, showing clips, explaining story points, explaining little plot points, and I think it went well. Don't you think it went pretty well?
I don't know. I hope so. Like from your point of view, I mean, how was it as a recap? Like, do you think it really served to inform Angela on what happened?
Yeah, I think so. It was pretty well explained. Your long knowledge of the lore of the franchise really helped us to kind of catch a picture of it. It was really entertaining. If you're a friend of Mike's or ever get to meet us, we should try that out. It's quite the adventure. It's a roller coaster ride.
But the thing that broke my heart was we had to skip over like some of the film's iconic action scenes because we were going to see the movie in an hour, and you want to cover the main story beats and not the action scenes.
Right. like the epic truck chases and all of
Right.
that we had to kind of fast forward through.
Yeah.
So it was a suboptimal way to see T2 for the first time, but it did give us a good flavor going in. And we watched enough of it where I felt like I got a pretty good refresher of this film and the ethos of it and just why it's so good, you know. We got to relive the film this way, which was kind of a huge roller coaster, but overall, we came away from it appreciating and really admiring it. The craft that Cameron went through to make Terminator 2. Thus, we went to see Terminator Dark Fate in right after that, and here are some of my thoughts. I thought I think there are grains of a pretty interesting story in here. I think that if we were to listen to the filmmakers kind of reason through why this movie exists, the press interview or whatever it is, or a spoiler podcast or whatever it is, the filmmakers would probably make this argument that this film is a cautionary tale about the future, about the value of autonomy and acknowledging that like the future's always in motion. No matter what we do here now, it may change the future, but it also could not, and the future could still find a way to make itself happen again. And also a parable about the horror of humanity's choices and evil choices. Because this is not a spoiler to say Terminator Dark Fate exists because something went wrong, you know? And I feel like that's just what this franchise is all about. But anyway, because of that, I think this film had potential to be better than it actually ended up being. It kind of got in its own way. And two major issues I think exist with this film are, one, the screenwriting and the dialogue, which was just abysmal and painfully on the nose. A liberal use of tropes that just didn't make any sense, besides the fact that they were kind of like winking at us and saying, I said this line that I say in every movie. But and two, the second real thing is the very existence of this film kind of negates what makes Terminator 2 so beautiful. It negates previous storylines. It kind of cheapens the sacrifice that occurs in those movies, the sacrifice that the T-800 made at the end by sacrificing itself, of Sarah Connor and her love for John. All of that has been terminated by this film. So I think because of that, I just couldn't enjoy it. I couldn't enjoy it in the way I feel like I could have if they really just kind of leaned into more of that moral quandary and stop focusing so much on like, these are why the previous movies were not as good as you think. You know, they did a lot of that. So those are some of my thoughts. I don't know what you think. Well, I do a little bit, but let's hear it. What are your thoughts, Mike?
Yeah, I have a lot to say, so bear with me now. I agree with
go.
you. I agree with you. Lots of interesting ideas and concepts in this film. Bringing Sarah Connor back, right? I think they should have done this a long time ago. We are 4 movies away now from Terminator 2. I think this is the move that they should have done with Terminator 3 a long time ago. Her presence is just so essential for the Terminator storyline. I don't know how they could ever think to like try to do Terminator without her. And I think seeing this movie, you kind of realize she's very much a part of Terminator. Like, she just as important as Arnold Schwarzenegger is. I think the concept of Mackenzie Davis's character is awesome. I'm not going to say too much about her for now. I'll save that for the spoiler section. But, you know, in the beginning, I was having a little trouble buying into her. But I think by the end, at the film's climax, I really dug her. I thought she was a really cool character.
Awesome.
And I like how Arnold is back in this film as a more restrained version of the T-800. He was just really goofy in Terminator 3 and especially Terminator Genisys. I mean, for example, like in T3, he when he travels back in time and appears, he appears outside of actually a gay bar in the desert. And so he has a line in which he says, "Talk to the hand." It's just so silly. That it has so many cheesy one-liners. It was so out of character for these Terminators, where they're supposed to be killing machines. And I felt like he was more consistent in this movie with what we saw in Terminator 2. Some level of humor, but not overly goofy. And I think the fact that they chose to ignore all of the non-Cameron sequels and continue T2, I think that's cool. And it's probably like the last thing they could do at this point. They've thought of pretty much everything, every angle to approach making a sequel for this franchise, right? So I think this is the last thing you could possibly do. Bring back Sarah Connor, ignore the other ones, and just continue T2.
So all of those other ones are struck from the continuity or the canon.
So those are
those
are non-canon now. So they're like a bad dream. Wow. That in James Cameron's words, actually. I think they gave it a shot. And they had really good ideas. I totally agree with you. I was nodding actually when you were saying, like, I think listening to like a writer's room or something, or the filmmakers just talking about the process of coming up with these ideas and the reasoning behind it, the rationale. I think all of that is fascinating and would be fascinating, but the execution of this film just did not land at all.
Nope.
Okay, so where do I start?
I don't know.
I mean, you mentioned the writing. I got to talk about the writing too. I looked up the writing credits for this film after we watched it. The screenplay is written by 3 different writers. The story is by 5 different people. I think that's very telling because the movie feels like a hodgepodge of concepts. When you have that many people working on it, it doesn't feel like a unified vision for a film. It just feels like it's churned out by like some kind of factory, like corporate factory. The dialogue, I am so there with you. I mean, you heard me groan during the movie and cringe, and I had to grab my chest because I was in pain. There's just so many moments when I just have to look away because it was just, I don't know, it was just painful.
What's the worst one? What was the moment when you said, "Oh, this hurts"?
So there's one where I'll talk about it in the spoiler section, but this happens a little bit later, maybe
okay.
like 15 minutes after that. But basically, Sarah Connor is back, and it's awesome. But when she says stuff like "I like chips," as in like eating potato chips, I'm like, why does she have to say that in this movie? Like, why do we need to learn about her snack preferences? Like, it's so silly. The characters are so poorly defined. Like, we know what they're going for with each of these characters. There's Mackenzie Davis's character named Grace, which I talked about before. There's this new character named Daniela Ramos. We know what they're going for with these characters, but they don't get us invested emotionally at all. It's just like so many of these blockbusters, the characters have to reveal themselves through expository dialogue, sometimes in really clunky ways during an action scene. If you look at Terminator 1 and 2, and I'm going to be comparing this movie to T1 and T2 because, I mean, this is a Terminator movie and it's trying to be a direct sequel to those movies, so you got to compare them, right? Look at those movies.
Right.
They did character and action perfectly. They never are happening at the same time. You do character first, action, then you breathe a little and have some more character moments. You never do them at the same time. They're not talking during the action scene. There's no exposition during an action scene. The pacing is so bad. 10 minutes into this movie, I remember we looked at each other. I'm like, this is not going to go well. Okay. If you
We've
look
had
at
a few of those in our history of watching films.
Oh yeah, let's. I mean, we got to do a retrospective on like movies where we kind of just knew like early on that this is not going to be good. In both, if you look at Terminator 1 and 2, okay, the Terminators don't converge on their targets until 30 minutes into the movie. Why? It's because we got to spend time with the characters, right? By the time the action starts in both those movies, we know Sarah Connor, we know John Connor. The action in this movie starts 10 minutes in where we barely know anything about the main human character, Daniela Ramos, or Danny, right? We don't know a thing about her. We just know some basic facts. I'll get into that later. But the action starts, and I already knew this movie's in trouble because it's just gonna keep. Once the action starts, we're gonna keep going and going, and it's too late. Like the character in their normal daily life, that's already disrupted by these freaking Terminators showing up in her life. So we don't ever get a glimpse of who she is before all this starts, before her journey starts.
Yeah.
So anyways, those are just some of my non-spoiler thoughts. I have way more to share in the spoiler section. Is there anything else you want to share?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you on just about all of this. The pacing kind of made us feel like they were just trying to get to the next thing each and every time. It's like 2 minutes here for this one fight sequence. Oh, and by the way, there's this next one coming right now, and the movie doesn't breathe. It's a modern blockbuster done poorly.
Yes.
In all of its warts, and this is the template for how to make a modern blockbuster that isn't good. This one meets all of those.
Unfortunately, we've seen this too much, right? We've seen this too often.
Yeah, it's a trend.
Yeah,
it's a trend. It's a trend, and I don't know what lends itself to it. Is it just the lack of attention span that society has these days, or is it just too much of a good thing in CGI? Are filmmakers just so used to making the most bombastic, huge action set pieces with the computer graphics that they just feel like they have to put those in there to justify the budget they're getting? That's a whole lot of stuff. I don't think that's beyond the scope of this podcast, so I think we should just move into spoilers. I think there's a lot more we could talk about.
Yeah.
Once we get those shackles off.
Just I guess a note on that on what you just said. Like I think we both are somewhat familiar with. We know people who work in the industry, and we follow movie news a lot. I think we should be a little bit. We are sympathetic towards like these big films because there's so much money that goes into them, so many investors. Right. There's the studio heads, and then there's the creatives involved, and it's just a constant struggle, to try to deliver an creatively and artistically sound product, but that also meets the business demands of the industry. So, we're criticizing the movie for all these shortcomings, but in the end, it is a business, and they have to kind of fulfill a lot of different obligations.
Yeah.
So
totally.
So while we're criticizing the movie, we do understand that there's all this other stuff that goes on behind the scenes, and it's not the direct result of just one person or two people. It's it's the entire process. But in the end, it's a movie, and we're just here to talk about the movie. So let's dive into spoilers so we can talk a little bit more specifically on what worked and what didn't work.
Yep, let's do it. Spoilers.
No, you're still holding on. Let go.
All right. Do you want to start us off? Because I kind of rambled on for a while.
Yeah. Okay. I want to talk about Dani, the actress. So, Natalia Reyes is the actress here. She portrays Dani, who is basically the new John Connor, in this story, the one who needs to be saved. I thought she did fine, but she was not given anything to work with. The writing was really flat. And it was a very uninspired story. I just felt like we were watching like the same film, but with like different people. It's kind of like Terminator Genesis, where you've got Emilia Clarke as Sarah Connor, and it just doesn't feel right, because of how similar the story is to all the other ones. It's some lady who lives a pretty ordinary life. Sarah Connor was a waitress, and Dani's works in the factories. It's a very normal person who suddenly has this divine calling on her life or something. Not divine, but you know what I mean.
Right.
But it just felt so not great. It felt so uninspired.
This is what we know about Dani before the Terminator show up in the first 10 minutes. Okay. Yeah. We know she has a brother. We know she has a dad.
Yep.
She works in a factory, and she's Mexican. That's it.
That's literally it.
That's literally all we know about this character, and then freaking Terminators start attacking her at the factory that she works at.
Right. For all we know, her friends, maybe she doesn't have any friends. Maybe all her coworkers hate her. Like, we don't know anything about her.
Yeah, right.
We don't have any reason to be interested in her. I thought at first, oh, she's a family woman. She's probably looking out for her dad and her brother, and that's nice, that's really cool. And then suddenly the action starts before we can learn anything else.
Yes. One more note on Danny. Natalia Reyes, she is really young looking. Like,
yeah.
There's a scene where we see, so there's a big reveal about this character, right?
Yep.
They're trying to make you believe that she's like Sarah Connor in that she's going to give birth to some male savior later on. And the quote unquote twist, which, you see from a mile away that this is what the twist is going to be. But they reveal that she is actually the savior in the future. She is the military resistance leader who rises and leads the humans to fight against the machines.
I was really surprised by that.
Oh, you were?
No.
Okay. Yeah, I'm like, if you don't see this coming, I think you need to watch more movies.
Yeah.
But like, there's a scene where we see her in the future, and she's rallying up all the humans, and like, we gotta destroy these things. She's supposed to look badass with her cornrows and everything, but instead, when she appears, she comes out looking like she's in middle school. Like, they make her look even younger than she does in the present day when her hair's down. And then she's there talking like to all these people who's like a foot taller than her. Like, it was that whole scene where I'm like, it's so hard to take her seriously because she's so short and she's so young looking. She looks like she's in middle school. So
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if it was the casting. Maybe they should have given her a box to stand on or something. I don't know. Like, it's just so much about this character that we didn't get to see anything of her before she went on this journey. And then this is supposed to be her arc. Her arc is supposed to be growing into this leader. And we do see that in the film. She becomes kind of like a leader later on. She wants to confront the evil Terminator. What's it called? The Rev 9. Yeah, she wants to confront him. Yeah, she wants to confront him at the end. She doesn't want to back down and run away. That's awesome, but what was she like before? Was she like a coward? Was she, in T1, in Terminator 1, we see Sarah Connor as a struggling waitress. She gets pushed over a lot. She's a lonely person. She has a date, but then he bails on her at the last minute. She's like walking around eating dinner by herself in the town. So, we have a good sense of who Sarah Connor is, and we don't get that with Danny. We don't know anything really about her.
It feels like she was developed based on film tropes of what a badass female lead character is, but like in the 80s,
Right.
Like, oh, she's supposed to have cornrows and look super hard and like from the streets, but like it just comes across as a little silly these days. It especially because she doesn't look like all the others she's supposed to lead. I wouldn't say that's on the actress at all. I really do think she has some talent. It's just she was not given any good material to work with. And I'd like to talk about Sarah Connor in this film too. Linda Hamilton, original badass lead character. She's been reduced in this film to a kind of crazy chip-eating, conspiracy theory believing, borderline racist Terminator hunter person. That was heartbreaking to see, especially because this is a huge spoiler. They de-aged her at the beginning of this film.
Oh, that was awesome.
Her back. That was awesome, right? They de-aged her, brought her back to her Terminator 2 self, and we were shocked. I was shocked to see her, and
especially because we just watched T2. So we had like her face fresh in our minds, and then we see her here. Right. Oh, so it was really well done.
Yeah, it was so well done. The CGI was nearly flawless. I don't know if you saw today. There was news that they're gonna make a new film starring James Dean.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, I saw that.
That's crazy. also scary. But
Yeah.
besides that, going back to this film, seeing Sarah Connor in her original state, super badass, mother of the savior of the world, like, and a huge reason why he grows up. And then we fast forward to how she looks now, kind of old and and I'm not being ageist, but they just didn't do her any favors. She just seems kind of crazy and cuckoo, and we're meant to sympathize with her. She's been traumatized. Another spoiler is that her son at the beginning of this film gets shot down by another Arnold T-800. Apparently there is an army of T-800s roaming the world, and just because the one that we saw in Terminator 2 saved them, the others weren't programmed to do the same, and so basically a loose end killed John Connor. And
That was very subversive, by the way.
Very subversive.
Very shocking way to start the film. I actually really like that.
yeah, I liked it too because I thought they're gonna do something really interesting with this, but they didn't. They used that subversion as permission to copy and paste the plot line from Terminator 2, but featuring a more diverse cast, slightly more diverse cast.
Yeah.
And that's it. But I think we should talk more about Grace, Mackenzie Davis's character. I think she's a standout in this film.
Before we move on to Mackenzie Davis
Yeah.
as Grace, I want to talk about just a little bit about Sarah Connor. She's supposed to be this badass like Terminator hunter, like you said, right? But she has like these noob moments. Like she shows up in Mexico City, blows up the Terminator, but then her car gets jacked by the people she's trying to save. Isn't that like a huge oversight? Wouldn't she have like something programmed in her car to like lock down or something? You know, considering like the
Or,
kind
you
of
know,
badass
like
that
take
she
the
is.
keys out of the car.
Yeah, right. Like she will leave the keys in the ignition. She hides her phone in potato chip bags. But apparently she was still being tracked. Like, is she supposed to be this badass, or is she supposed to be like this crazy lady? I don't know. I just thought it was a little bit inconsistent. Like, they wanted her to be badass, but then she's making all these dumb mistakes throughout the movie. That's like kind of silly when you think about it. Anyways.
Yeah, it's one thing to make her like cynical and kind of beaten down by the world, you know. Her son passes away because reasons, you know. And that's a good reason to kind of go off the deep end, but she seems pretty sane, pretty normal, just making really dumb mental mistakes, and it's just sad. It just comes across as really sad.
There was that really like I thought it was really well written and acted, and I definitely felt it in that scene where she talks about how she's never kept any pictures of John.
Oh yeah, that was a good moment.
Yeah, and she's now forgetting what he looked like. That was heartbreaking to me, you know, because I mean, you know, we all grew up with that character. I mean, I grew up with that character, so just seeing Sarah Connor talk about her son like that is really sad. But you know,
that would have been
another.
It would have been interesting to have that character in this movie, you know, instead of crazy conspiracy theorist lady.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off.
No, it's fine. I felt like with John Connor though, like this is the last thing you could do with that character. Like in Terminator 3, he was like a reluctant hero. Terminator Salvation, he was like a grizzled, unproven war soldier. Terminator Genesis, they made him the villain. So like literally they've exhausted all their tropes and their options. So now there's like, okay, let's just kill him.
When in doubt, kill him off.
Yeah. I mean, once you've done everything, you know, just kill them and see what happens.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it was a great way to start the film. But yeah, like I agree. I totally agree with you. Everything else seems just copy and paste, but a poor copy and paste with like, it's like formatting errors, you know, you're trying to go from PDF to like Google Docs, and it's all,
oh my gosh.
It's all
yes.
off.
Yes. It's like you're trying to copy and paste song lyrics from azlyrics.com and all the formatting's just off.
Yeah.
All
right. Grace, Mackenzie Davis.
Grace, yes.
What did you think?
So you liked her. I actually wasn't sure what you thought of her character, but it sounds like you enjoyed her.
So at first I had some trouble like getting into this character. Like I thought she was cool, like, oh, enhanced human with Terminator abilities. But then, you know, our introduction to this character is she's just expositing the plot details, you know, as she, you know, they're like she's taking Danny and her brother into the truck to get away from the Rev 9 Terminator, and then Danny's like, "Who are you?" He's like, "I'm a Terminator from the future. That guy's a Terminator. He's out to get you. He's trying to kill you to prevent the future." You know, that was already a bad introduction to this character. I was like, "Oh my gosh, is she just gonna like spat out lines like that?" We get a flashback showing who she is, but I don't think that got me any more invested in this character. Right? She's a soldier who gets taken down immediately because the Terminators are too crazy in the future. She gets brought in and volunteers herself for the humanoid program. I don't know if we got a name for that, but that was like it, right? That was all we got of this character. And it kind of just felt like a Wikipedia article about Grace just brought to life and acted out. So it was very dry, and you know, I think the best way to do this stuff is to show the character in action, show her what kind of person she is. Like, you know, she saves someone from a bomb, or you know, something like that. You know, like saving her fellow soldiers. I don't know, just the way I thought it was a waste of a flashback. Like I was actually like excited to see, to learn more about her, but we don't really get anything other than what I just said. But you know, at the end of the movie, during the final fight, I mean, dude, she was so badass. Like, I think what she was wearing, like her costume was cool. She was like all black, and then she had this chain, and she was just swinging it and using it as a weapon to swing at the Terminator. I thought that whole sequence was awesome, and I think just how she acted in that scene, just the look that she gives the Terminator, that look of determination, and like she's pissed off. I thought it was awesome. So, sorry. What were your thoughts on her? You thought she was awesome, right?
Yeah, I thought she was great. I thought, like you said, I thought the introduction to her was super rushed, but she ended up being quite solid. She was she ended up being a pretty likable character in the end. Aside from a few cringe lines, I thought it was pretty cool that she's Kyle Reese basically, right, in this story. And she says she spins off the classic line differently. It's "come with me or you'll be dead in 30 seconds" instead of "come with me if you want to live." And I thought that was a nice little send up. Yeah. And overall, I enjoyed her. Mackenzie Davis, I wasn't aware because she's usually kind of in more character driven stories, you know. I wasn't aware of how enormous a person she is, how huge and imposing her physicality is, and it was cool to see that shown in a good way, and it's very believable that Mackenzie Davis could beat these people up. You know, usually sometimes you'll get a film like featuring I don't know, some female character who's really strong and such, but she's kind of tiny and beats up these huge dudes, and it just doesn't seem very believable sometimes. I hope we don't get any hate mail for this, but with Mackenzie Davis's character with Grace, you could totally believe it. You know, she does a great job. I think she did a really good job in this film.
I think people can conclude from this episode that we are heightists. We don't like short people.
Yeah, we don't like shortists or short people. So. Send all your angry emails to Mike Tang's Twitter account. He's the one who said all this.
I started it. I made fun of
but
Danny
overall,
for being short.
Yeah. Danny's short, therefore she has no value. So someone's gonna one day take this clip and like cause me to lose my job or something.
I mean,
don't get any ideas, people.
In our defense, we married amazing, powerful, strong women.
Yes,
who are very short. My wife is like 5'1", so, you know.
Yeah, Angela, yeah, my wife is not the tallest either, but she does have a haircut that looks like Grace. Um, yeah, I think in kind of without going too much further, I think this film feels like a big Terminator fan film send up. I think you mentioned that when we were watching it, Mike. But it's kind of a big parody of the real thing. Even we didn't even talk about Arnold Schwarzenegger in this movie very much. He's unrecognizable. Okay, so we watched T2, right? And he looks a certain way. Watching him in this film immediately after, and this is supposed to be the official sequel to T2, right? He doesn't look the same. And I know he's not meant to be the same specific Terminator or same specific T-800 model, but it just feels strange. It's almost like, this doesn't feel like the same universe almost.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Just to comment on the same.
He made the movie better though.
Yeah, I think when he showed up, the movie did improve. Sorry, just a brief tangent, and we'll get back to talking about Arnold because we got it because he's the Terminator. The color palette of this movie is so bright and colorful. Like Danny's wearing a yellow shirt. There's like red clothes hanging off the ceiling. Hanging off the clotheslines in her apartment complex. It's just a bright and colorful movie. There's like blue, like very strong colors. If you look at T1 and T2, they're desaturated and washed out, and there's a very bleak look in those movies. And I feel like if you're trying to be a direct sequel to those movies, you got to make it consistent, at least aesthetically.
Yeah.
I think there's just also.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, I mean that's what stood out to me about Terminator 3. When it's supposed to be a sequel to T2, they called it Terminator 3. It was the same problem, the same issue that I had. The visual aesthetic, the color palette, it just didn't match the previous two movies. Same with Terminator Genesis. Terminator Salvation is probably the only one that tries to kind of match the bleak sci-fi action aesthetic. I think also the fact that there's a lot of scenes that are shot like CGI, like there's supposed to be a city in the background or like some freeways. I mean, they're sitting around in a green screen studio, right? It doesn't look real at all. It doesn't look like they're there in person. I think that's just inconsistent with again the look of and feel of the other movies. I know technology has improved since then. You can do that kind of stuff, but I mean, just as a way to honor the original films, like at least make it match visually, to that style. Anyways, it's a lot. I'm like going all these rants, but
No, it's good. I don't think filmmakers take that into account enough. Jurassic World looks nothing like Jurassic Park. It looks nothing like the world Spielberg created. It doesn't seem like it's in the same universe. On the other hand, Star Wars feels like one universe. Everything looks like it's from the same place. It's because they pay attention to the set pieces and the details and the color palettes and J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson bring The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi into that feel of the original trilogy because they shot on film. And it matters. It really does. And this film just feels like they didn't give a crap. Like, we're making this new story. We don't really care what happened before. This is what we're going to do. And for a movie that features James Cameron, who's like, I would have thought cared a lot about this, it really didn't seem like there was any care given.
Yeah.
Or not enough anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. That's just, I guess, our observation. I mean, who knows what went on behind the scenes. I don't know why they chose to shoot it the way that they shot it. Let's go back to Arnold Schwarzenegger as the Terminator.
Yeah.
Carl, as he's called.
Carl.
In theory, this sounds interesting, right? A Terminator who fulfills his function, his purpose by murdering John Connor, and then now he has to find a purpose. He's wandering the earth, this Terminator from the future with now no mission. So it sounds interesting in theory, right? But in practice, in application, in this movie, it looks so silly. He's sitting at home watching football. He hands his guests a couple of beers. He's wearing a t-shirt and cargo shorts. I'm like, this is not a Terminator, man. This is like Uncle Bob, dude. I mean, he has some funny lines. You know, he talks about how he's a good helper. He never complains, and he's extremely funny. Both of us laughed out loud pretty hard at that line. And his delivery was so good. I think Arnold Schwarzenegger is very underrated in terms of his humor. He comes in really late into the movie, so but it does improve. I agree with you there. I think at the end when we see the final fight, right, the Rev 9, he's approaching Grace, Danny, Sarah, and T-800. Even though these characters were not the best written characters, you can't deny how badass they look when they're standing together.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought that was awesome. I was like, hey, surprisingly, I'm looking forward to them fighting this Rev 9. So and it's just some cool moments too. Like Grace teams up with a T-800. They take swings. They take turns striking the Rev 9. So some really cool action moments.
Yes, I agree. That's why I came away from this film generally feeling like I had a good time and enjoyed it. Because when we finally did get to the action sequence at the very end, it was a very enjoyable way to conclude. Yeah. You can't ever be upset about Arnold Schwarzenegger fighting in any film, It's just wonderful. The energy and presence he brings to the screen just elevates what could have been a pretty poor movie, and that's why Terminator without him just didn't make any sense before in those previous attempts. It just can't happen. Am I right? He's not in one of them.
Yeah, he's not in Terminator Salvation.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. See, that doesn't make any sense,
Yeah.
So.
All right. So I think is there anything else you want to talk about before we conclude?
Yeah, I think we've made it pretty clear how we feel about this film. I did want to ask you what you felt about the villain, the Rev 9. Deus Ex Machina. Unkillable machine.
I thought he was fine. He kind of reminded me of like a video game character because he has a liquid body and then he splits off from the metal endoskeleton, and so now there's two of them.
Right.
And then I thought they had to destroy the endoskeleton in order to kill the liquid, but like in a video game or something. But that didn't happen. So I think it was cool. There's that scene where he's storming the prison, and then all the guards are jumping on top of him, and all you see are spikes going through them. Really cool visual, cool sequence. But other than that, dude, you're comparing him to Arnold Schwarzenegger in T1, and oh gosh, we got to talk about Robert Patrick in T2 as the T-1000. Just one of the greatest villain performances of all time. The way he runs, the way his stone cold features in his face. He's such a great movie villain. So this new guy, I think his name is Gabriel Luna, the actor. Those are some really big shoes to fill, and I think he does an adequate job. But I think just like with everybody else in the movie, it's just that there wasn't enough material there to support the actor's performance.
Yeah, I agree. That's basically what I feel about it too. So
yeah, I saw Twitter reactions to this movie from critics before it came out, and a lot of them were saying that this is the Force Awakens of the Terminator franchise. And honestly, perhaps maybe that's what it aims to do, but in execution, it is just so far from The Force Awakens. I gotta just take it some time to talk about Force Awakens. Okay, so the way they introduce their new characters. Okay, Rey doesn't say a single word, but we know so much about her from her daily routine, right? There's that one shot of Rey looking at the old lady in front of her, doing the exact same thing that she is. We already can tell so much about just this two-shot exchange. Finn doesn't say a word, but we know what makes him tick when he refuses to execute the villagers. Poe, just from his banter in conversation with Kylo Ren, we know what he is, who he is. He's a fearless, hotshot resistance fire pilot. Really quickly establishes these characters, right? They understand archetypes. They understand how to show us these aspects of these archetypes. My point in talking about all this is that blockbuster filmmaking may be extremely difficult with all the financing and all the investors and studio heads and all that stuff, and even creative differences amongst filmmakers, right? A lot of stuff happens behind the scenes. But at the very minimum, these are artists, and dude, you guys got to be able to, like, The Force Awakens shows us what a blockbuster is capable of being, right? There are artful, beautiful, effective, and efficient ways to get us emotionally invested in these characters, without rushing into action scenes. Anyways, I think I've said all I needed to say. I just needed to get that out there. This movie is bombing at the box office, domestically and worldwide. Even China, the market that gave Genesis the necessary boost to ensure a sequel, it's not doing so hot over there. I just think it's time that they let this franchise go. I think the problem is that Terminator 2 resolved everything, right? The way James Cameron wrote that ending, it was a definitive end to that story.
Yes.
They destroyed Skynet. So if you try to continue that story, and they've tried 4 times now, and none of them have been successful with critics or with fans. They've tried to do a time travel reboot. They tried a war movie in the future. Now we've had 2 straight continuations of T2, and none of them have worked. Let's just let it go. The franchise needs to go. It was amazing. It was a great ride, but I think this is the end of the road, man. I mean, all the actors are old. This is it. Do you have any closing thoughts before we end?
No, yeah, I agree with you. I think this kind of is a cautionary story, and simply my point is this: some stories do have a good ending, and they do have an ending, and there's no point in continuing a story that concluded, unless you can really come up with some good reason for it to happen. Otherwise, it's okay to end a story. And to talk a little bit about the blockbuster machine that you mentioned earlier, movies are stories, and good storytellers will always be there. And if movie studios could start investing in good storytellers more than in technology only, I think they'll get a lot further than they currently are. But that's that.
Yeah, that's totally agree with you.
It's time to let old things die.
Our good old friend Kylo Ren. All right. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode on Terminator Dark Fate. We look forward to seeing you again soon.
No, you're still holding on. Let go. Okay, bye.